Joining me now is Elias Weiss. Elias is a political analyst and a journalist, highly respected, and I respect your opinion always. Thank you for being back on the program.
Happy to be here, as always.
All right, we're going to jump right in. Donald Trump will not serve 4 years, and I'm going to tell you why. The deep state, the powers that be, as we like to say, have a mandate, and their mandate is to make sure Orange Man does not have too much power, and that means they're going to remove him from office. Now, I am not talking about violence here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not talking about political violence. We've all seen what happened, unfortunately, during the campaign. I think they will enact the 25th Amendment. I think while he's negotiating with the dictator, Vladimir Putin, or while he is behind mass deportations, they will figure out a way to remove Donald Trump from office. That is my prediction going into this Trump administration. Your thoughts?
How do you reconcile that? My first thought is a question. How do you reconcile the domination of the party, the allies that he's installed, the allies he will install, and the allies he already has and who won elected office? How does one reconcile that? Do you predict, I'll start by asking you a question, do you predict that more Republicans on the Hill are going to turn on Trump after early decisions that he makes?
100%. Right now, Donald Trump is hot. Right now, Donald Trump is in vogue. He's popular. Tulsi, RFK Jr., Elon Musk, the list goes on and on. Eventually, when he starts to enact some of these controversial decisions, like I'll go to mass deportations, like I will go to negotiating the Russia-Ukrainian conflict, and when he negotiates that and he gives Vladimir Putin some land in Ukraine, I think they will flip, because I think there's a lot of independents, Democrats, and a lot of rhino Republicans that absolutely freaking hate Donald Trump. And these politicians will feel the heat from their voters, from their constituents, and they're going to say, get rid of this man. And I fully think that he will not serve 4 years. It's my belief.
Well, I disagree. I mean, first of all, Donald Trump, in 2016, he had zero political experience whatsoever. He didn't win the popular vote. He won it in a squeaker. This time around, he has political experience. He is a politician. He won the majority vote. He did something a Republican had only done once before this millennium. And what you have to remember is that the people that need to make that decision, I think they're people who are serving their constituents first. This mandate came from the constituents. This is the argument I've been having ever since November the 5th, which is that how can we possibly let this convicted felon, into the White House? All of the rhetoric coming from the left about saving democracy. First of all, we are not. You're going to hear this from the right. You've always heard it. We're a constitutional republic, not a democracy, right? These are arguments that I would expect from the left if the positions were switched, because democracy is majority rules. Donald Trump won the majority vote. The majority of people reject DEI. The majority of people reject an open border. The majority of people reject the Democratic Party in the way that it is now. I don't think that the majority of people are not classical Democrats. I think that the majority of people do not fit with the Democratic Party as it is today. They hired a wrecking ball for a reason. This was the jury. That was the jury. The United States, every voter who voted for Donald Trump knew that they were absolving him of his transgressions in the justice system. Everybody, including myself, who voted for Donald Trump on November 5th, knew that going in. That is democracy in action. This is a president who was elected democratically. He was elected to do it as a wrecking ball. These people want to win midterms. Republicans, they have the trifecta. They're going to be up against a huge obstacle when it comes to the midterms, and they want to retain their seats. What can we learn from Democrats in 2024? That they listen to the Hill, to the advisors, to the advocates, to the policy groups, the think tanks, before they listened to their constituents. And the constituents came out and they said, this is not what we've been asking for. Reminds me back in 2020 in Texas, when you have these black communities that are saying, please, for the love of God, stop killing us, stop murdering us. And the state of Texas says, oh, you want us to stop calling them master bedrooms? Okay, we'll call them primary bedrooms. And by the way, the police, we're not going to touch that. It's about listening to the people. They're screaming for something. His popularity did go down to 30%. We know that after Donald Trump was elected in 2016, his popularity tanked. He made it through 4 years then. I know that people say he doesn't have the voice of reason in the room anymore. I think Donald Trump is smart enough to not get himself into that position. And people say he wasn't smart enough to avoid court. I think he knew he was right. I think he was right. And I think the American people all but confirmed that.
It's not about being smart enough. It's about his boldness. It's about his bold, extreme actions. We saw him put up Matt Gaetz. Well, they got rid of him pretty quick in a matter of days. We see him now floating a 25% tariff to Canada and Mexico and an extreme tariff to China. People on both sides of the aisle are calling that crazy. The Mexican president today said that would cause job loss of 400,000 American jobs and crazier inflation. We see him say on day one, before I take office, I will have the Russia-Ukrainian conflict negotiated out. We see him talk about mass deportations. All of these things we agree are problems as Americans, but what we don't agree on is the extreme ways in which Donald Trump has floated that he'll deal with them. Some of those things are not just campaign rhetoric. We're already seeing it happening. We're already seeing these proposals. If indeed he does in fact do these high tariffs, if in fact he does give a sliver of Ukraine to Vladimir Putin, and if in fact he does allow Tom Homan to do his job with these mass deportations, you're going to see, I'll say right here in Arizona, the mayor of Tucson already speaking out, the mayor of Phoenix speaking out, Governor Katie Hobbs speaking out. When you see the powers that be speaking out already, we haven't even hit January 20th yet, you're going to see that go on overdrive. And when Donald Trump does or says some stupid stuff like he usually does, all of this beautiful roller coaster and this momentum is going to come to an end. And that is when they're going to figure out a way to remove him from office.
Well, first of all, you say that we can't agree. I completely disagree with that. From where I stand, a majority of us Americans do agree. We agree that we want him to enact the campaign promises that he made. A majority of people say that. You'll never get 4 people in a room to agree on something. You're not going to get 340 million people to agree on something. A majority of people, you can't play this like you did in 2016. I'm not talking about you personally. The left can't play this like they did in 2016 when he didn't have a popular vote. There's no more griping about the Electoral College. The majority of people want a wrecking ball. They want him to undo. He's got 4 years. He doesn't get 8 consecutive years. He not only has to carry out the rest of what he promised in 2016, he also has to undo 4 years of what 98% of Republicans and 70% of Democrats, that's according to the New York Times Siena, which is that the Biden administration failed, set everything back in the wrong direction on immigration. 70% of Democrats are telling the New York Times this, and almost 100% of Republicans. To me, that's agreement. That is agreement. Mayors, Regina Romero says it's racist to deport people. Read the room. First of all, to say that that there's all these leaders that are coming out and speaking against it. I also saw Katie Hobbs last Monday in Nogales saying she's excited to work with President Trump on securing the border, that she is excited to work with President Trump on finding a compromise on how to do deportations. I also saw Tom Homan yesterday in Eagle Pass, Texas, saying that on day one, the mass deportation starts with the 7 million undocumented immigrants who already have a conviction or pending criminal charge. These are criminals. Why do we not apply it evenly? Read the room. Kate Gallego, Regina Romero, they need to read the room. Your state was won by Donald Trump. People asked for this. Donald Trump flipped 10 border counties in Texas for the first time in American history to Republicans. Majority, 75, 80, 85% Latino, majority Spanish-speaking counties. 10 of them he flipped for the first time in the history of this country. Those counties are on the border. It's just like with all of the messaging that has come from the left over all these years. When Latinx, you know where that came from? At its peak, Pew Research found that 3% of Latino Americans preferred the term Latinx at its peak. That was in 2020. Today, it's 1%. That's from Pew Research. Somebody fact-check me. It was never popular. Where did it come from? White elites. Who are the people who think that deporting criminals is racist? It's coming from white elites, and the proof is in the vote. The proof is in the vote in the border counties. That is where it all is. Those are the immigrant families.
Respectfully, Donald Trump did not run on deporting criminals. Donald Trump ran on mass deportations.
Coming into this country illegally is a crime.
But when I say criminals, I guess I mean
I know what you mean, because you separate
that
that crime from other crimes.
I do.
And why do we do that?
I do
because everybody just has a right to live here?
I do because I understand in our culture in America the power of social media, the power of video. And I can illustrate you George Floyd. Let's bring up George Floyd. The power of video. When that went out across America, we saw craziness. We saw cities burning down. We saw literal violent protests. The first time you see a deportation on social media, a father holding on to her daughter, a woman holding on to her son, and you see ICE, you see maybe even the U.S. military, a local sheriff, police, ripping away that person from their loved ones, from their grandmother, and throwing him in the back of a paddy wagon, and that just gets sprayed across the world, you are going to see mass protests, and Donald Trump is going to have a major, major problem on his hands.
And the mass protests are going to come from the 48% of people who voted for Kamala, just like they did last time. And they're fatigued. They're fatigued. And what they're saying is that it's going to be handled by the states. It's going to be handled by elected officials in the states. The people on the ground are exhausted. And you know why? Because they realize they're in the minority. They realize that they got a lot of that stuff wrong. A lot of the stuff they were pushing was not popular. Defund the police was sweepingly unpopular among Republicans and Democrats alike. Open border is sweepingly unpopular among Republicans and Democrats alike. It always has been. It always will be. It is a crime.
48% is half the country, right? More or less. So you're saying when we see maybe these mass deportations and we see those videos that I'm speaking about, you think that that's going to be okay and he's just going to get away with that? And just half the country
is just as okay. When you say, first of all, if Donald Trump deports the same number of people this time, and we're all afraid of Donald Trump after 4 years, I still don't understand that we're all afraid of Tom Homan, who was the border czar for 4 years. The same guy, the same thing. We're getting exactly what we got from 2016 to 2020, and people are freaking out about Tom Homan, kids in cages, the whole thing. Do you know if they deport the same number of people in the second term they did the first term, they still would not have deported as many people. They still would not have separated as many families as there were under the Obama administration. That's hard data, that's numbers, and that's absolutely factual. If they deport the same number of people, they can't top it. So to speak of it as something historic, it's frankly not. And if you look at the surveys, and this is among Democrats, this is among people of color, this is among immigrant families, there is no difference in the American psyche for majority. That majority might be 50% to 48. I'm fully willing to accept that it is. But there is no difference in the mind of somebody who supports this action at the border between separating a family at the border and I'm going to bring my kid to work today at the meth lab where I work, and guess what? When the police come and raiding it with rifles and I'm going to get handed over to CPS and my parent's going to go to prison. Oh, it's not fair. We got to keep the families together. It's not your fault. Nobody ever blames the kids. Nobody ever blamed the kids. You're going to go to CPS because your parent effed up. They broke the law. They went to prison because they brought their kid to a meth lab. That's, it's the same thing. I'm going to bring you into the commission of my felony, and when I get caught and go to prison and you get turned over to the government, it's offensive when it's this crime, but it's not offensive when it's that crime. Seeing a kid get separated from their parents when they're getting arrested at a meth lab and seeing their kid get arrested, getting separated from their parents when they're arrested at the border, to a logically minded person who's not coming at it with emotion. I'm not saying that people who disagree aren't logically minded. I'm saying people who are coming at it from a purely logical, non-emotional place are going to see those two events as the same. There are more people like that than we thought, which is why the result of the election, I think, is what it was and why it shocked that 48%.
This is not separating families at the border, though. This is in rural Nebraska. This is in New York City. This is in Florida. And when we see images of people that are already in the country, that have lived in the country, that have legal documented family already paying taxes and thriving in the United States of America, and you're going to rip apart a portion of that family because whether it was under Obama or Trump or Biden, they somehow snuck into the country illegally. I guess I just don't have the confidence in the American people, given what we saw during George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests, that 48% of the country is just going to allow that to happen. I think we're going to see mass protests. We're going to see a lot of violence. And again, the power of social media and video, I just don't think it's going to go over well. And I'm scared. And I'm really scared. And the beautiful thing about Donald Trump this time around is, number one, Donald Trump can't run for office again. Donald Trump got a mandate from the American people. Donald Trump was voted in, and he can do whatever the hell he wants now because he doesn't have to worry about a lot of this political maneuvering because he's not going to run again. The scary thing about Donald Trump this time around is Donald Trump can't run for office again. He doesn't have to worry about the political maneuvering. I think, in a sense, as wild as that first term was, it kept him in check because he always knew he wanted a second term. Now he's got that second term. Now, my fear is he could be on a revenge tour.
He could be, and that's what we saw. You brought up Matt Gaetz at the beginning of the segment, and that's what we saw with that. I was actually watching Yellowstone last night. I don't know if you've seen it. Great show. And there's that scene where Casey's talking about when he's in Afghanistan. They send in the foot soldier, guy's ready to die, see how many shots come back, size up the enemy they're working against. That's exactly what I see the Matt Gaetz thing. I don't think he was intended to be an attorney general. He was the guy that was put forward as that pawn, as that sacrificial foot soldier to say, what are people going to put up with? What are people not going to put up with? And guess what? The people didn't put up with it, and he was out immediately. And so that doesn't seem tyrannical to me.
To my point, they didn't all fall in line.
Sure.
J.D. Vance held him by the hand,
and that's
chopped
good
him
evidence.
around.
That is good evidence for your point. It's hard to imagine for me that Donald Trump would let things get so far past what he did in the first term that it would involve invoking the 25th Amendment. Now, we're breaking
not hard for me to
precedent.
imagine at all.
We're creating history, and I'm open to it.
He'll be impeached again.
I'm
obviously.
open to it.
He'll be
but of course,
again.
That's the political lawfare. That's the lawfare that people have voted against. It doesn't mean anything. It's a boy who cried wolf situation. Because I'll tell you, Billy, I will be the first one. I said with the impeachment last time that there was merit to it. When he was impeached, I spoke on the radio and I said it was fair. It's the same thing I said with his trial. It's the same thing I said with the 2020 election. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I believe in the system. I believe in the system when it elects Donald Trump. I believe in the system when it elected Joe Biden. I believe in the justice system when it convicted him. And I also believed in the American law system when the public essentially overturned that conviction. I believe in all of it. I believe in America. I believe in the system. People say we're a young country. I grew up hearing that. You probably did too. We're such a young country. We're such a young country. Of course we are. In terms of the fact that we're a nation of immigrants and most of the immigration has happened recently. But guess what? France rewrote its constitution a couple of years ago, and I remember the story that came out in the New York Times when they did. The United States now has the longest-running constitution in the world. Every country has a newer government than the United States. Sure, France, as an idea, as a concept, might have been around for a very long time. The concept of China, or a country of Chinese, ethnically Chinese people living in that territory that we call China, for thousands and thousands of years. But in terms of the government, in terms of the last time it was restructured, the last time laws and constitutions were written, the United States is now the oldest in the entire world. There is a reason why it has staying power that it does, and it has staying power. And by the way, we can do a whole show on all the ways I think it should change. There's no such thing as a perfect system, but it has staying power for a reason. So I believe in the system. Generally, I do. And so that's why I never pushed back hard against the impeachment. I never pushed back hard against
the wildest shit in the last 6 months.
That's where we differ.
I don't believe in the system because I think that the system has humans that are cogs in the wheel that are very faulty. They're faulty humans, just like you, just like me. And I think that power and money and the deep state, they will trump Trump. They will not allow him.
I agree with all of that.
You know what? Are you a sports fan?
Big time.
So when my team early in the season is peaking too early and they're riding high, I get worried. I got worried for Governor Ron DeSantis when he was running in the air. Oh my God, Ron DeSantis, just put him in the damn White House. I said, no, he's peaking too early. Donald Trump is peaking right now. He hasn't even put his hand on the Bible
I've
yet.
been having that thought, but you need to give him some credit. I want to bring up one example from last time. The whole thing with NATO. It was bipartisan. The NATO thing, it was a disaster. It was all the words, I can't even remember all the words that were used to describe how awful the decision it was. Back then, 6 of the 31 member countries were paying their 2% minimum. Today, it's 26. 26 out of the 31. And it was when he left office.
I am
shouldn't
so
say
happy.
today to give Joe Biden credit for that. That is a foreign policy win, as far as I'm concerned, as far as many Trump voters are concerned.
I'm so happy you brought up NATO because now, again, you're making my point for me. It's just another reason, and maybe the most underestimated yet the biggest and most powerful reason that he won't serve 4 years. The moment he starts negotiating, he flies to Moscow. He might even have Putin over here to the White House. Starts negotiating with a dictator. The moment he gives the Donbass region and some other regions of Ukraine to Russia. The moment that he negotiates with Bibi over in Israel. The moment that he starts saying, you know what, I think we're going to pull out of NATO because, again, to your point about the financial considerations and why should we be protecting Europe, and Ukraine is definitely not going to be a part of NATO. The moment he floats those things, and the moment he comes out strongly, in an Oval Office Rose Garden address and says the United States, under this administration, is strongly considering pulling out of NATO. Well, now you don't only have the Democrats pissed and the rhinos pissed and the independents pissed and 48% of the country pissed. You've got a large portion of the global world pissed. And then all bets are off. Because if he starts floating that as sitting president, that he's legitimately going to pull out of NATO while he's negotiating with Vladimir Putin, I am telling you the cards are going to fall. And he must be very, very strategic and very careful.
He has to be. And I'll tell you, I don't always trust him to be. We're going to have to see what happens. I completely agree with your analogy. It's been frontal in my mind recently that he's peaking too early. If the peak is before he gets sworn in, I remember his popularity going from 70% to 30% almost overnight. I remember that. He's older now. Sure, he's got more experience, but he's also older. He also has a chip on his shoulder. I remember that. It's very possible that it could happen. But there's something to be said about giving the credit, because all of the fear-mongering that came out of 2016, it just didn't come to pass. The NATO thing was a huge part. Part of his genius or his stupidity that he's been lucky that it worked out, depends on where you stand. But his strategy is strong-arming, it's threatening, it's idle threats. This is what happened with NATO last time. Why do we think this time he'll pull out? He won't pull out. That's my prediction. Is Ukraine going to join? No. And guess what? A majority of Americans don't want Ukraine to join. They don't want us to continue to be their sugar daddy. I mean, I want to say their ally, but their benefactor, their sole benefactor.
Sugar daddy's a pretty good...
Sugar daddy is the right word for that. A majority of Americans, including Democrats, don't want that. This is what the people elected him to do. They elected him to be a wrecking ball. He has more levity. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm saying it objectively. My opinion as a political scientist is that the people have given him the levity to come in, take 4 years, and undo as much of the last 4 years as possible to shake things up. I think they'll give him the grace to follow through with it. In politics, 4 years is a very short time. And to bring it back, because I have to address the impeachment thing, sure, he will again. But the point is that it's a boy who cried wolf situation, and that's what I wanted to get to. This next time he gets impeached, it's going to happen, right? Or there's going to be a vote. The next time impeachment papers are filed, will it be legit? Will it have the merit to look at it on its face, take the names and the personalities and the emotions away, and say, would you vote yes? And will I say yes? Probably so. But the boy who cried wolf effect is very, 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 very real here. I saw, this morning, there's a new sexual allegation around RFK. Did you hear about this? From decades ago. And of course, it comes out, days after he's announced for that. People are getting tired of seeing this. And you know what? It hurts real victims. And it hurts our process in the United States of impeaching a president when you do it over and over and over just to make a point. When you take Trump to court over and over, when you take something that could have been charged in a single count and you make one count for every single individual instance of that, to break against the precedent set by the judicial system, to say you're caught with a 32-page document that's been fabricated. Obviously, that's not the facts of the case. Speaking generally, you're going to get a charge for that. Well, you could charge you for all one charge for each 32 pages. To throw the book at somebody with power is not smart, because when you fall on your face, it looks like you didn't have a case. These are self-inflicted wounds from the left, because they did have a case. And because I believe in the system, I believe he was lawfully convicted of a crime. He's a felon. I said it. It's true. He stood before a jury of his peers in a United States court, and they found him guilty of a crime that he was charged with by an American prosecutor. That's the way it's supposed to work. So that's exactly how it happened. I'm not going to question the legitimacy of that. What I am going to question is whether people are sick of seeing it. And when next time it comes around, if it doesn't have an even more negative effect on Democrats, because people are so sick of it that they put this safety risk, and who I supported for other reasons. But he is a safety risk. Would I have preferred a safe Republican? Hell yes. I wish I had a safe Republican to vote for. I am terrified of Democrats, and I know that they don't represent me. They don't represent any majority of people. They certainly don't represent me. I'm a straight white guy. How am I supposed to vote outside my own interest? I don't. We all have one vote because we all vote in our own interest, and the majority rules. It's the fairest way to do it. That's what we did. Every American voted in their own interest, myself included, and this is who we ended up with. So we got a safety risk. Sure thing. But the reason that Democrats, if they're smart, they won't impeach him again, because people voted for them to stop. Cut out the lawfare. Cut out going after him all the time. People want to see the government work together. That's why last Monday, and I see Katie Hobbs, my Democratic governor, who I also voted for. I voted for Hobbs and Trump. I voted for Gallego. People ask me how I can reconcile that. Well, I reconcile that because I study the issues, and in those, in a race-by-race case, those are the people that represented me best. And there were 250,000 Arizonans, 250,000 Arizonans, who voted for Donald Trump and didn't vote for Kari Lake. 250,000 people. I am one of them. And so how do we reconcile that? I'm sick of being asked how we're going to reconcile that. I expect my elected officials to work together. I hired Donald Trump to close the border. I hired Ruben Gallego to not be Kari Lake, and to protect free speech and to work with the federal government. This thing with mayors, I went against the right. When I was at the New Times, I wrote a series just lambasting the right on how they tried to get involved with the border. Maricopa County, the Board of Supervisors, the mayor in Fountain Hills. I was the one covering the Joe Arpaio race we've talked about on this show before. And he said, well, number one thing, I want to give people more confidence in the border. I said, Joe, it's not your job, man. You're a mayor. And I completely just denigrated the right all of 2022 because every town is a border town. Bullshit, every town is a border town. The border towns are on the border. And guess what? Just like Latinx, all the people who are so afraid of hurting the community, that's not our community. They're not allowed by law to be here. We are protecting our community. A majority of people agree with that, whether you like it or not. So what I have to say to Kate Gallego and Regina Romero is, be a mayor. You say, well, they're members of our community. As mayor, I'm supposed to serve the community. Yeah, the members of your community are committing tax fraud. You're not auditing their taxes. You're leaving that to the IRS, right? So maybe leave the border to the border guys. And remember that the people on the border voted for Donald Trump. And so the people up in Maricopa County, hours north of the border, they voted for you. Congratulations. Have a blue county. I expect my elected officials to work together. And when Katie Hobbs is in Nogales saying, I am going to work with Donald Trump, frankly, I have a lot more respect for her than I do for Kate Gallego or Romero. And that's why I voted for her.
Donald Trump is the most competitive human being maybe on the face of this earth. Donald Trump feels that he got a strong mandate from the American people. Donald Trump also won the popular vote. I want to get back to something that a lot of people and a lot of shows aren't talking about, because that's what we do here. We fight against the mainstream media, and they don't have the time to discuss these type of issues, and quite frankly, they're not allowed to discuss some of these things. Again, going back to my fear, he feels like he has the power through the vote, and he does. I mean, he won the popular vote. He also knows that he's probably, another thing people aren't talking about, going to get another Supreme Court pick. Maybe 2. A little birdie on the inside told me maybe 3. I worry this next term, he understands he cannot run again. You can talk about his family. You can talk about him propping up Laura or Eric Trump or J.D. Vance. In a sense, Donald Trump doesn't give a shit about that. Donald Trump cares about Donald Trump. I worry, political hat off right now for this country, because I worry that this time around, he's going to do what he sees fit to do. And in a certain way, because he won so strongly, he is not going to hold back. The MAGA people are going to love it, but there's a large percentage of the country, even people that voted for Donald Trump, are going to be very scared. And I do think he's going to do and try to push through some extreme things like mass deportations, like tariffs, like going toe-to-toe with China. And I think there's going to be some blowback there. And just to put a bow on this, just so we have it here on wax, he will not serve 4 years. Because I am telling you, the power of this system that you say is so great is going to come crashing down on his head.
You have to believe, and a lot of people do, and this has been the messaging from the left, that he has nothing in common with anyone who came before him. And a lot of people don't think that about him. They see him as a politician who's going to come in and he's going to do things differently. But he's not going, this country can survive if everything goes the way that the people on the far left fear it will. This country is still strong enough to survive that. I don't see anything crashing down. And I really worry about the damage that Democrats have already done. I have worried about that as a private citizen. I worry about it in a bipartisan way, that if we don't like you, we are going to throw all of our power at you. That's what people criticize Donald Trump for doing now, and he hasn't even done it yet. But that's what everybody just witnessed Democrats doing for the last 4 years. I think there's a chance that Donald Trump wouldn't have run again if he wasn't mired in all this controversy. This country could have actually let him ride off into the sunset, and they didn't. They're obsessed with him, and nobody is more obsessed with him than Democrats. This country can't let him go, and the people who can't let him go the most are the Democrats. And to think that they're going to willfully let him go when they're serving their constituents who voted him in, it's hard to imagine. First of all, tariffs, same tariffs that were executive order on day one last time. And everything was cheaper than it was under Biden. Every category that is tracked by the federal government in terms of the prices of goods was cheaper with those tariffs in place under Trump than it was for Biden. Just a simple fact. We've seen this before. That propaganda, what I see as propaganda, where this will happen. It's the same stuff we saw before. This entire country saw that it didn't come to pass. Now we're being told all the same stuff again. It's the same Tom Homan. It's the same Donald Trump. It's the same tariff. It's the same border program. It's all the same. Now, it's not all the same.
To me, it's not the same. Again, I'll go back to it because he doesn't have to get elected again. He can't. This time, he doesn't give a shit.
And this
it's
time,
not the same.
The people want it more in bigger numbers, and they want bigger action because there wasn't the mess. Obama didn't leave a mess like Biden did. I think Obama was a fine president. Obama, if you go back and listen to him running in 2007, 2008, he sounds like a damn Republican. He's the first guy I would vote for now. Obama didn't leave a huge mess. He didn't. He was broadly popular, and Donald Trump didn't inherit that mess. So his mandate from the people who did not elect him in a majority was to work with chambers of Congress that were blue and to shake things up a little bit by not being a politician and being business-minded. He didn't run on peacetime. He didn't run on a platform of no, I'm going to make sure that no global wars start under my presidency, but that's what happened. And look at now what's happening coming out of the Washington Post. This ceasefire in Lebanon that was negotiated by Biden, it was a gift to Trump. This country is afraid of him. Guess what? People inside the country are afraid of him. That they elected him anyway. People say, how can you reconcile that? I'll tell you exactly how. Because they know that the world, as scared as you are of him, the world is so much more scared. And you mentioned that. All the NATO members are going to be pissed off. They're already giving gifts. They're doing the ceasefire that they wouldn't do for years of just war. They don't respect this country when it has Democrats in charge.
We're going to finish up with this, but I am not, to be clear, I'm not scared of Donald Trump. What this show does is stand up for two things. Number one, freedom of speech. Number two, holding our elected officials accountable. At this point, President Trump is an elected official. He's about to take office in a matter of weeks. We have to hold him accountable. Even his supporters have to hold him accountable. Just because you don't have another term, just because you won the popular vote, just because you feel like a strong man now, doesn't mean the American people are not watching. There is a limit to this. You can only go so far.
Look at how many
values in this
switch
country.
sides.
I just want to hold him accountable.
Those people can all switch back.
I don't want to see families being separated, whether they're criminals or not. I want to see gangs being deported. I want to see a lot of all that, giving them free cell phones and free hotel rooms and all that shit taken care of. But I'm a socially liberal guy. I don't want to see there's got to be a better way to do this. And I'm just saying, be very careful what you wish for, because this man right now has a lot of power, and there needs to be checks and balances, and that starts with us as citizens.
He is. I'm not wishing for a ton. Me personally.
A ton of what? Deportations? Just some families get separated?
Listen, I'm okay with it. I'm absolutely okay with it. If you saw that there was in Nebraska, rural Nebraska, pick your place as far from the border as you want, in Maine, or it doesn't matter where, and you see that huge numbers of criminals are arrested in a sting operation.
But you're saying criminal
or
in a different way I am.
You are, yeah,
To
I
you,
am.
a criminal
because
is any
a crime
human,
is a crime.
a 12-year-old girl right now in Maine.
Your child into the commission of your felony, you deserve no sympathy from me.
Okay, well,
and that is a popular
belief. So
belief.
That's a difference. We just need to
differ,
define
and that's
criminal.
fair.
Criminal to you is anybody that's on land in the United States that is here illegally.
A criminal.
When I talk about criminal, I'm talking about a gang member
who commit federal crimes, and people who commit felonies are criminals. To me.
There's a lot of them.
And if you knowingly, there's a lot of them.
And guess what?
If you knowingly bring your child, your infant, into the commission of your federal crime, you deserve no remorse. That's what I believe.
Yeah, but this is like the gun argument, people that want to get rid of all the guns.
Why
there's
here?
more guns than humans in America. You want to get rid of all the illegals?
Because it's better here. It's not going to be better for long if it's a free-for-all. And that's what people want. It's about fixing the problem we have. It's a pendulum. The political spectrum is a pendulum. We obviously swung way too far to the left. We know that just the election of Donald Trump, if he was assassinated before he was ever sworn in, had real effects on this country. Microsoft, Google, Walmart cut all DEI. All the Ivy League schools ended affirmative action admission. So did the University of North Carolina. The ceasefire that was just announced yesterday with Hezbollah. These are real effects of Donald Trump being elected. That's how we know we swung too far to the left. The Democrats are looking back and saying, 3% of people at its peak liked the term Latinx. 19% of people at the peak that we can find, again, this is Pew Research, supported or said they would be okay with a biological male in a changing room with their daughter. The Democrats are looking back and saying, damn, I see it now. I had the numbers all along, and I just thought if I called everybody a bigot that they would then want to join me. It's like learn from the past mistakes. The same thing. If they didn't impeach him twice, if they didn't make 32 counts out of one thing, if they didn't charge him in 4 different courts in the span of a few days, would he have won? Would people have elected a safety risk? When you have people like me who go on shows like this for a living and talks about why people should vote for Donald Trump, and I'm calling him a safety risk, that person got elected for a reason. People are not stupid. We're like ants. You can find one person, and maybe they don't know a lot. But the collective conscious, we can build empires. And the people know that. In order for the pendulum to swing in the way that we all want it to end up, because our goals are the same, is that it centers down in the middle.
You're right. You're right there.
It has to swing the other way to undo the damage.
There's been too much
because the left
craziness.
has been in control for decades. They have taken everything too far. And that's why I think he'll serve 4 years. This Senate, this House, this country, this electorate are going to give him the levity to come in with a hammer with nothing to lose, because that's what they wanted, and to start fixing some things. And if he breaks a couple things while he's swinging the hammer, the Democrat who will get elected in 2028 can deal with it then. And a lot of people, if his promises come to be, and I'm not going to come on here and make any promises on behalf of Donald Trump, because I have no loyalty. I owe him no loyalty. But if he makes good on his campaign promises, then I think that if that hammer swinging results in breaking a couple of things for the next Democrat to fix, that his voters will look back, especially compared to Kamala Harris, who's right now putting drunken videos out on Twitter, and they'll say, we made the right choice.
See, I love having you on the show because you bring a lot of facts, you bring Pew Research, and you have a lot of numbers up in your head. I go more on a vibe, right? I go on a vibe. I'm just looking at that first social media video of the mass deportations. But okay, we'll agree to disagree. And one thing I do want to say, I'm Team America. The day that Joe Biden got elected, guess what? I was rooting for Joe Biden. A couple weeks back when Donald Trump got elected, guess who I'm rooting for now? I'm rooting for Donald Trump.
And that's what we
do
have in common.
It's for the red, white, and blue, and I believe in this country, and I believe in the stars and stripes. I just want to hold people accountable. We'll finish up with this. The art of the deal. The art of the deal, Donald Trump always talks about in his book. Let the art of the deal happen in these global wars. I'm asking for the whole country, the populace, as a people, let Donald Trump work his magic with Vladimir Putin. Let him work his magic with Netanyahu. Nobody wants war. Nobody wants death and destruction. I think all of us want world peace. So allow him to use his negotiating tactics, whatever that may be, to bring some peace to the world. Joe Biden, to your earlier point, and his team have done a terrible job in diplomacy. Terrible job. So if he's failed in that category, allow the new administration to come in and work his magic. Let the art of the deal happen.
There's a reason why, look, a lot of what happened in the Middle East, it's because Joe Biden wanted to win those votes in Dearborn, Michigan. There was a lot of choking off aid, and people say that Israel overreacted. Well, the root word of that is react. They didn't instigate. Offense is the best defense, and terrorists, we will not negotiate with terrorists, was lost by the left in the last 4 years. Well, guess what? That is the American paradigm. We will not negotiate with terrorists. If you have cancer, do you go in and pluck out one cell at a time, one sick cell, and you just pull one out and you let a few more metastasize and you go and you grab another one? Or do you cut out the whole damn tumor and kill it? That's exactly what you do. That's why Joe Biden's strategy doesn't work. Now, we don't have to talk about that. We don't have to debate that because everybody agrees with that. Donald Trump said it again at his most recent speech this week. I don't remember if it was Monday or yesterday. He said, I will not be sending our men to war. I will not be sending Americans to a forever war. I will not be sending Americans to any war. I am a man fairly able, but I could be in better shape. But, I'm a healthy guy in my 20s, man. I'm going to be first number to get called. That's a big reason why, because under the Biden-Harris administration, I could see myself having to be deputized. I could see, people talk about World War III. That's real. It's a matter of when and not if. And when it happens, will we survive it or will we all nuke each other? No matter what happens, I believe this country ends in war. I believe there's another war coming. I don't know if it'll be in my lifetime. I'm not saying it's imminent. I'm not saying it's these current powers in these current countries, but I'm saying that humans don't know how to live in peace. It's human nature. We never will. There will be a war. So I'm going to vote for the guy who says, young men, I'm not going to send you to war. That's another reason why I like Donald Trump. Now, he is saying that. We know, as any politician, some of the things have started to change a little bit. Am I gonna stand up for that? I'm not going to. When he says, okay, yeah, you got me. Project 2025, I'm looking at that. Probably gonna take some stuff from that. Do I think that's slimy and gross? Absolutely. Be honest about it. A lot of people read it and they thought there was stuff in there that was good. And a lot of people had faith that the stuff in there that wasn't good would be removed when it came before the checks and balances. So I'm not a huge fan of that. But look, he hasn't changed his stance on war, and he won Dearborn, Michigan. All those lives that were lost in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Israel, it was all for nothing because he didn't win those votes. That was the reason for that choke point. That was the reason for it. We're talking about a country that is geographically smaller than the state of New Jersey, getting hit from literally every angle from a war it didn't start. They were trying to live peacefully. If somebody isn't peaceful after you provoke them, it's your fault, right? If I hit you first and you hit me back, I'm the one going to jail. I'm the one going to prison. You're not going to prison. If you hit me back 10 times harder, if I smack you in the face and then you knock me out as a reaction, I'm going to jail. You're not going to jail. Under the letter of the law. It's the same thing here. And Donald Trump is already proving it with the ceasefire deal that we saw that the Biden administration never could. If there's one thing we know, it's that the world, and you could say it's for bad reason, but they are so scared of him that they will not take the risk to even let him get sworn in. 5 minutes. It reminds me, 1981, January of 1981. It was within seconds, literal seconds of Reagan being sworn in that Iran released the hostages. He was taking over for a Democrat. That's why this country elects Democrats most of the time and why it elects Republicans when it does in the modern era.
Well, you have gotten a lot more extreme since the last time I talked to you. You brought the fire today, Elias.
No, I'm just feeling fiery.
No, you brought, your views are definitely morphing and changing. I hear it in your voice, and I think that's a beautiful thing because we need people to speak out. And, all I'm saying is, look, the world is afraid of him. He is kind of a wild man, and he's extremely unpredictable. And now he has a mandate. with no more election in his future.
I want to say this, though, and for all to hear and for you to save and clip it. If he F's up, I will not be on his side. If any of his people F up, I will not be on their side. If Kirsty Noem ends up being a ditz and she doesn't handle national security well, I'm not going to be on her side. I have faith, as you did and I did with Biden. I remember all the Republicans back in 2016. You heard this trope over and over and over again. I know you've heard it. If you don't already know what I'm going to say, you're flying on a plane. Why do you hope the pilot's going to crash, right? How many times have we all heard that? And I applied that with Biden as well. Unfortunately, he crashed. I wasn't rooting for it. But that's where I'm at here. I think he proved something in his last term. With the tariffs, with the NATO, with the border, I think he surprised a lot of people. I think he could again. I also think he might not. And I will be the first one to say, I gave you the chance. You let me down. It could happen.
You can't
Democrats have let me down.
You cannot be half pregnant.
Republicans have let me down.
You cannot be half pregnant. So we got half of a prediction, and my prediction is pretty straightforward and strong. Donald Trump will not serve 4 years, and we'll have to sit and wait.
I'm not going to have as much confidence because I'm open-minded. I have to be honest and completely candid with what I believe. I think the more likely scenario is that he will serve the 4 years. I think because of what he has in place with that trifecta, with that popular vote, I think people want big. I think that he knows how to do things that seem extreme, that are within confines of the law. And I think that there are enough people in this country who want him to do just that, who know it's a blip on the radar, it's a flash in the pan, it's going to be a bright flash, it's going to be a 4-year flash. He's going to do a lot of stuff, and he's going to be gone forever. And no matter who takes his place, it's not going to be Donald Trump. Even if it's his surrogate, there is no one who is Donald Trump except Donald Trump. There are people who are willing to go along with him on stuff, but they're not willing to be the guy doing it. I think that of his surrogates. I think that of his own children. I think he is a one of one in the history and future of our species. And so I'm not worried. If every Republican was Donald Trump, I wouldn't be voting for Donald Trump.
Very well said. Very well said. Elias Weiss, and just, I guess, just in the back of my mind, for freedom of speech, I will say this as well. Just remember, when people are watching this and they say, Billy, you're crazy and you're much more level-headed, which you might be, and I also might be crazy. Just remember, the mainstream media, just remember the liberals, the Democrats, a large percentage of our country was calling Donald Trump Adolf Hitler and said that rally in Madison Square Garden was a Nazi rally. Just remember that. And what happens?
I also remember in 2017 when Marco Rubio was the one advocating the investigation into the Russia collusion. I remember them talking about how it was such a bipartisan effort. And guess what? He's the Secretary of State now. Why? Because Donald Trump proved him wrong. I think that's something he's good at, proving people wrong.
That if Adolf Hitler is in power, there are people that are going to make sure that he gets out of power and quickly. That's all I got to say. Elias Weiss, thank you so much. Political analyst, journalist in Maricopa. Give me your quick pitch. What do you got going on?
It's a lot of fun. We're growing. We've officially launched our other magazine, In Buckeye, and we've put out 3 magazines so far. We're working on the next one right now. Got a great editor down there. He used to be at the New Times. He's also worked at the Capital Times. He's worked at the Mirror. Great guy. He's a very good investigator and political observer. He and I and you all have a lot in common. So he's running the ship over in Buckeye now. I'm overseeing everything. We hired 2 new reporters from Cronkite, hitting new numbers, 1 million reads in a month for the first time.
And, go in Maricopa on the YouTube channel. You got some of those police videos.
We love the body cam.
The drunk driving, whatever it is, body cam. You got like over millions of views on them. Wait till the mass deportation videos. You'll have a lot more views. Elias, I appreciate you. Like I said, you're one of the smartest men, one of the smartest humans in the business. I think we're allowed to say Merry Christmas now. So Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever that might be. And I appreciate your kindness and your talents. Thanks for coming on and debating.
Thank you, and likewise. You're smarter than me.
I don't know about that. Better hair maybe. My name is Billy Harfash, broadcasting from Star Worldwide Networks. Thank you to Robin here that is running our sound, and our engineer producer, the Swiss Army knife, Rob Trigg. We're fighting against the machine here for freedom of speech. And we're fighting against the mainstream media. And it's shows like this that I believe and Donald Trump's administration are going to take over. In fact, I think the mainstream media is almost going to be inconsequential in the next election. Again, my name is Billy Harfosh, Scottsdale, Arizona, Star Worldwide Networks. Please like, comment, subscribe. We'll be back with more explosive interviews.